Let's get some analysis now with Leonid Petrov. He's a senior lecturer at the International College of Management in Sydney and a visiting fellow at the Australian National University. Good to have you with us, Leonid. Firstly, this planned meeting, I think, took many analysts by surprise. How do you feel about the prospect of Kim Jong Un visiting Russia and Vladimir Putin? Is this a sign that perhaps Moscow is now desperate to find more weapons to fight its war in Ukraine?
Well, on the one hand, Moscow and Pyongyang have been the Cold War allies, brothers in arms, since the Korean War, which was stalled 70 years ago. And since then, North Korea has been preparing for potentially another attack, stockpiling conventional weapons, and these days, it's a self-proclaimed nuclear-powered nation. So, on the other hand, North Korea has been under the very strict, probably the strictest in the world, zero COVID lockdown for 3.5 years. North Korean borders were locked, and Kim Jong Un didn't travel anywhere. So only recently there has been first flight from Pyongyang to Vladivostok. The Koryo airline reopened its regular flights, and well, the choice of the destination Vladivostok perhaps was not random, given that the proximity of China and its close economic relations between North Korea and China. North Korea decided to open its route to Russia, and now we can see that President Putin is going to visit China instead of visiting the G20 in India and meeting President Xi Jinping in Beijing. Is probably going to provide another opportunity for him for a short trip to Vladivostok, where the North Korean leader is going to visit, perhaps during the Far Eastern Economic Forum, which is going to take place in Vladivostok sometimes later this week or early next week. This is what happened back in 2019, when Putin and Kim met, sat down, popped a champagne, and talked about cooperation. Now it looks like it's a moment of truth when Kim Jong Un is going to help Russia with weapons, and Russia is going to help North Korea with foodstuffs, technology, and again, brothers in arms going to get together again in the new Cold War setting.
Well, that's right, because it clearly is a two-way street here. And so with this increased military cooperation between both Russia and North Korea, surely that must heighten fears in the Korean Peninsula. The US, South Korea, Japan must be looking at this very closely.
Absolutely. Just a couple of weeks ago, the leaders of Republic of Korea, Japan, and the United States met in Camp David to discuss the possible development in the region. So Northeast Asia continues to be a divided region by the Cold War mentality and also by the weapons and the arms race which is going on the both sides of the Korean Peninsula, on the both sides of the Pacific Rim, is something which potentially bring the world closer to a nuclear if not a catastrophe, but a potential crisis. We see that Russia and China, together with North Korea, planning a joint naval exercises, and perhaps Putin and Kim are going to discuss the details just as soon as next week. After meeting with President Xi in Beijing, Vladimir Putin will be more eager to get support from North Korea, which separates both Russia and China from a US-allied South Korea. So what has been going on in Northeast Asia for the last 7 decades potentially may bring not just the region, but Northeast Asia in general to a potential catastrophic situation. And the way that North Korea is providing Russia with millions of artillery shells and projectiles is going to help Russia with its illegal war against Ukraine. That's why the Russian Defense Minister Shoigu visited Pyongyang just last month, and perhaps set the background for this summit between Putin and Kim. And perhaps President Xi is also going to be briefed by Putin very soon on what is going to happen between Moscow, Pyongyang, and Beijing.
Okay, Leonid Petrov, we'll have to leave it there, but great as always to get your analysis. Thanks again.
Thank you, Oscar, for inviting me on.